for Love and Light, and now somebody gave me a calendar that is just, and I say somebody, it was my mom, gave me a calendar of like these crazy days, and it's like a tear away calendar, so each day has a different age. And the 25th is Don't Fry Day. Don't Fry Friday. So it's a day specifically to remind you that since it's right before Memorial Day, you need to start wearing sunscreen on that day. So you don't have to thinking at all. Yeah, I was thinking like don't eat fried food. That's also, sure, don't do that, but take that picture for Ella.
Here's Pikachu.
His daughter's been looking for Pikachu all weekend.
No, that's a Mimikyu. That's a Mimikyu.
It's not, oh!
He's pretending
Nice
to be
try.
Pikachu.
Ooh!
Right back.
Well
That's
done.
a fake Pikachu.
Mimikyu did its job. It's a mimic.
You'd be like, you're a liar.
Thanks for nothing.
What's your favorite day? Like, crazy day?
Oh, man.
Pancake day.
No.
Garbage day.
I do like Pancake Day, but there's Pizza Day, and I still don't think that one's my favorite. Pack Rat Day was a funny day. That was a couple days ago. I'll tell you what was not my favorite was like clean out your closet. And I was just like, no. I tried, but if you're like me, you like look at everything that needs to be done and take a moment going, I don't want to do this. And it like just overwhelms you. And then you're like, oh, just start small. And this is fine. And then when you remove everything from the closet, you've just transferred the pile of overwhelm.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, this is great.
And then you turn around.
And then you realize it's a couple hours later and you're like, I don't want to do this. You throw it all back in the closet.
That's every time I clean my apartment.
Yeah.
Literally every time.
You just transfer mess.
Yep.
I had a joke when I was a kid. We put all my toys in one closet, and I used to refer to it as the Toys R Us closet. So my mom was like, well, great. If you want to get something to play with, go to Toys R Us in the closet. So it saved them money for a while until I realized what she was doing. But I would just, as I got older, shove everything in the Toys R Us closet. And then Toys R Us would like, as soon as you'd open the door, you'd be terrified that it would fall on your face. I would put like anything in there.
Living Jenga puzzle.
Yeah, it was awful. Dollhouses like fall on you.
Oh, no.
Like Legos everywhere.
That's my entire house.
Raining Legos is not a fun experience, by the way. Do what?
Better than raining doll houses.
Yeah. I had one, they were all like little tiny like Polly Pockets. So then like we would stack up the Polly Pockets and then when they would all slide down, if one of them got unlatched, then you'd be like, where's the little Polly? Like trying to find it. I told my cousin about that.
Hard to find.
Yeah, she's 13 and she's like, what's a Polly Pocket? But look, guys, she can highlight and do makeup like nobody's business because YouTube. And when I was 13, I was like wearing a lot of glitter.
Yeah.
Glitter's great.
I don't understand.
You just won't get it out of anything.
Did you also add the blue eyeshadow?
No, I did I remember there was like a weird eyeliner. It was a two-sided pencil that was like that ice blue that like you would look dead. And I got the matching lip gloss. And then I would put that lip gloss on and reenact scenes from Titanic. Because I really did look like I was frozen. And then but the white eyeshadow, I would do that, and I thought that looked really cool. And I look at pictures, I'm like, what are you doing? You're wearing white out on your eye, is what it looked like.
a dead corpse.
Yeah, exactly. And being as pale as I am, it's like, it's just washed out in blue. Terrible. So, SAO.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What is that?
Sword Art Online?
You played ALO.
Yeah. She's like, I don't know. So about that. But yeah, so that's what this panel is. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? Because I've just been talking about weird days. I'm just the weird day girl.
So this is the Weird Day panel.
Don't even get me started. We could make that a panel.
So this is the panel labeled the Sword Art Online panel, where we will probably not talk about Sword Art Online. This is what happens at every panel.
That's
We'll
true.
make our way back. We'll tie in weird days back to Sword Art Online by the end of the panel.
Good luck, Cherami.
So I'm Bryce Papenbrook, and I am the voice of Kirito in Sword Art Online.
I'm Cherami Leigh. I'm the voice of Asuna in Sword Art Online.
I'm Mendez, and this is song. Yes, it is on. And I'm the voice of Yuuki in Sword Art Online. My child.
Yes.
Well, to kind of kick it off, I'll start with the questions. I'll start with the questions. I think Mother's Rosario is my favorite arc of the entire series, even though I didn't get to talk that much. Kirito in that arc,
Enjoyed it so much.
he's there just enough to remind you that the
That he
story,
exists.
that he exists, yeah. He just comes in and like runs on a wall and beats a bunch of people up, or describes how good of a fighter your character is.
No, that's so true, actually.
Yeah, he's just there just enough.
Just to be like, by the way, this is still my show.
Just remind you guys.
Just taking a break right now. Just a little break.
That reminds me of like when I see that on a television show, like live action, you go, oh, this is when that actor started getting really popular, that he started shooting movies. So shooting movies, and they could only get him to work for a couple days. So that's when your career was really taking off.
How did they know I was going to get cast as Eren in Attack on Titan?
At the same time, is that really when that happened?
It was pretty close, actually.
That's beautiful.
Well, I think season 2 of Titan was right around that time. But I want to know, like, what was your experience? What are the highlights from that arc of Sword Art? Like, what are your best memories of that time?
Putting it on me, Bryce. I see what you're doing here.
It's both of you guys.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe not. No, it's all about me, really.
True.
I mean, that are, yeah.
I don't know, in my opinion, not to like super trash on Sword Art, but Mother's Rosario is like, you could just watch that and that could be Sword Art.
Oh, thanks. I've set this panel up the same way.
4 minutes in, and that's, yeah.
So the right way to watch Sword Art is Mother's Rosario.
Everything else is fine.
Everything else. If
No,
you want.
I actually
So everything
liked
else is great.
the first half of Sword Art, and then I kind of lost it for a little while. But then Mother's Rosario brought me back in. Like, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I hear it's really good. So I do. Anna put the copy, but I can't watch it.
You should. It's.
I know. I hear it's amazing.
To me, it's very reminiscent of the Einkrat arc, that first arc.
Yeah,
it is.
And I love that one. That
Yeah.
was so good. But I don't know. Well, one of my favorite parts about Yuuki in particular is that she's not a part of Kirito's harem.
She's a part of Asuna.
Every other girl is, and I'm like, yes.
Well, but, you haven't seen Ordinal Scale yet, but he's trapped her in this ball. He kind of carries her around in the real world now. And she's just with him on his
Oh,
shoulder.
Yui, did I see Yui or Yuki?
Oh no, it's Yui that's
Yeah,
there.
Yui.
But
I was like, what movie were you on? I was like, did I record? I recorded that movie.
I was trying to trick
My
her.
performance was now so wrong. I like that I didn't immediately go to Bryce is incorrect. I went to, how did you miss that? And then was panicking that I had ruined the movie.
Yeah, I don't know what I was talking about anymore.
You're not part of the harem.
I got confused because like he was mentioning the ball on his shoulder, and I was like, well, I did do that.
You did do
like
that.
but Asuna, she was in the ball and Asuna.
Yeah.
But no, like in all seriousness though, just the way that we recorded like that end episode was really cool because I've never done anything like that before. Spoilers for anyone. You guys have all seen Sword Art Online?
Yeah.
Yep.
All of it, probably.
Who's never seen any Sword Art before?
A couple.
Usually there's a few people who show up to the Sword Art panel who haven't
Has
seen any
anybody
of it.
not seen Mother's Rosario arc?
Okay, I'll try to be vague, but at the end, there's a scene that has Yuuki lying down, like, in the grass. So, Alex Von David, the director, wanted to kind of simulate that experience. So they actually brought like a reclining chair into the booth with me and had me laying down in the chair, and they mic'd me so that like I could still talk while laying down, but it kind of gave me that like weaker feeling. Because I was literally trying to like reach the mic, so my body is just like, you know, so I'm straining to do everything, and it like kind of made my breath do a certain thing, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I've never recorded like that, and I probably never will again, but it was a really cool experience, and I think it turned out really cool. So
yeah.
I'm glad Alex let us try that. Because I mean, if it didn't work, he was gonna just do it normally, but Alex is just so creative in the way that he does things, so I really enjoy working with him.
So Alex Von David, our director for Sword Art, and he also did Blue Exorcist as well.
Yep.
And Erased, and
Kill la Kill.
Kill la Kill, and like a lot of things. But he's such a great director because he takes time. I mean, there are some projects we'll work on where they're like, let's just get the lines as fast as we can, as soon as it fits, let's move on. And Alex really wants each moment to be as perfect as it can be, and he's definitely a perfectionist, and I really appreciate that. But he usually writes all the scripts that he directs, and he wants to come up with creative ways to make it seem like it fits the animation and make it seem as real as possible. And I think his background is in directing film and commercials and things, so he's got a very cinematic feel to directing animation, which is really unique to work with, and I really like working with him. So that was one of my favorite things about Mother's Rosario, and just working on Sword Art in general. And during that time when I was working on Mother's Rosario arc, I was dealing with, I mentioned yesterday, that I was dealing with the loss of my great aunt, and I had never dealt with any passing that was that close to me. And so doing some of those scenes, I don't want to spoil anything, but it was a really big part of my healing process. And it was so weird how sometimes you get the roles that help you the most at the time. They show up in your life when you need them. So
Yeah.
that was really cool how that worked out.
Yeah, Alex had told me all of that before.
Oh yeah, because you recorded
before the
after
session.
me.
I requested to record after everyone.
Okay.
Just because like that scene in the Japanese like affected me so much, so I
Yeah.
wanted to get that same feeling. So he actually played the entire scene with everyone but me, and I watched it, and I knew about, you know, your aunt, who said, and I guess Erica Lindbeck's dog, like her hometown dog, had gotten,
Yeah.
her family dog had gotten put down pretty recently. So, you know, all of her stuff was like her reacting to that, and just like hearing everybody, you could hear the emotion in everyone's voice, and like that always gets to me, like
Yeah.
in performances. So I started crying when I'm watching it, which is amazing, because I was like, the Japanese, like I said, made me really emotional too. So the fact that dubs can be so powerful now, that they affect, you know, people in that way too, it really helped, I think, my performance. And then me just thinking about, you know, things in my life that affected me at the time, you know, stuff that from the script that Alex had written. It was easy to bring that emotion out, and I'm like probably legit crying through about 90% of everything that I
definitely
recorded.
sounds like you are.
To talk a little more about Alex's directing style, Kirito speaks a lot in screaming. So
Not screams a lot.
no, he speaks
a lot
in screaming.
through screaming.
Yes,
Beautiful.
yes, that's
Like,
how he expresses
it's a
himself.
different language.
So when I watched the show in Japanese, Mr. Matsuoka, who plays Kirito, his screams would kind of give you the chills. And we wanted to capture that same feeling. So Alex would save the last 15 minutes of every recording session just to scream. So I would scream a ton as Kirito, especially that very first scream in the first episode. We spent a lot of time trying to get that right. And in Ordinal Scale, there's some really, really big screaming moments.
Yeah.
And it was this really interesting thing that had only happened to me a couple times. There's like this almost haze that was coming over the screen, and we asked the engineer, like, what is this sound? And he's like, oh, it's the microphone. It's the capsule and the mic slamming against the back of the microphone because you're screaming too loud. No. But in all seriousness, I can barely talk after those sessions. That's why he saves it to the very end. And when you're screaming at that intensity, there's no way to fake it.
No, you can't.
And there's no way to protect your voice during certain types of screams. So for me to be able to talk again on Monday, I'm not going to scream. And the ceiling would probably cave in if I screamed that loud.
Well, I mean, honestly, the mic would break.
It would.
And
it just
like,
explode.
You're not insured to break the mic.
Yeah.
And I just can't be responsible for explaining that because I know you won't.
Come out of your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I walked in the booth after you recorded the lying down scene.
You were like, perfect.
I was like, hey, does everyone else get to record like this? I've totally been gypped my whole life.
My voice away and everybody else is lying down.
I thought they set it up like that as a joke.
Contract?
So, no, but I don't remember what I was working on with you. This might have been Sword Art, but it might have been something else. But I got in the booth after you had been there, and the mic was like at the floor.
Oh, I remember that picture.
And
oh,
yeah, so he was recording like squatting down on the ground, and I was like, "Is this the new?" And so I like sit crisscross applesauce on the floor, and like, "Do you want to record that way?" I was like, "Well, you might do it for this level."
So to defend myself, I do different things to get into different kind of character roles, and then depending on the scene, I'll kind of adjust my body. So if it's a fight scene, I'll kind of like hunker into a fighting stance, and it drives engineers crazy because it sounds like this. Okay, I'm talking.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, what are you doing in there? And I'm just like, mic me at my toes, I got this. And I kept saying this to one particular engineer, and then I came in one day and the mic was like this. On the ground.
Literally. Yeah. Totally different, unrelated to Sword Art, but there was another studio where the mic stand, this was before they got a new mic stand, so all of our iPads were on there, and I know you guys all worked on this project, but I don't know if your roles have been announced. Yeah. And so in this studio, I would be like watching the screen, glancing down at the iPad, and getting my lines and getting back up to see if it was matching the flaps. And then we noticed the director said, "Hey, why are you sound really depressed. You sound like really quiet, really depressed." And then we realized like the mic stand started out up here, and when we noticed it, it was down here. So the reason I sounded depressed is I was like reading down here, so my voice was really low. And she goes, "Are you kidding? You don't notice that? That's uncomfortable." And so she came in and like duct taped it all the way up because she's like, everybody else when it slides down, they just pick it back up. You just keep going. It was going to be on the floor. And you just wouldn't know. You'd be like, "I'm having trouble seeing it. What's happening?"
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, because the director was telling me about that. It's Gundam, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Gundam
an
Seed.
for Gundam.
Okay.
So for Gundam Seed, Kiernan told me about that, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, how could Cherami not notice it?" And then, sure enough, it happened to me, and I was like, "Oh, that's how she didn't notice it."
It's so subtle.
Because Carrie's like, "Is the stand like low again?" I'm like, "Oh, you're right. It is." Oops.
You're like, "How did Cherami not get it?" She goes, "It's literally below where your belt would be. What are you doing?" I said, "I'm sorry." You just don't notice. It's weird. It's a weird day.
I won't say if I worked on that project or not because I don't know.
I don't think
they've announced. So I don't know if I can say, but I've worked in that studio, and that was the saddest microphone stand ever.
Yeah, it like wilts.
Yeah.
It's like a slow wilting flower.
As you're talking, it does this.
Just gets sad where it feels.
Well, and when they finally got a new mic stand, I was like,
I missed
they
it.
missed the whole one. It had character.
My 5 rolls of duct tape.
Yeah. Anytime she'd get duct tape, she was always like, "Sure," and like ripping the duct tape. I'm like, okay, well at least she's mad at the duct tape and not at me.
She named it Cherami.
Yeah, the duct tape is Cherami. God, so sad.
Well, we could probably open it up to a couple questions if you guys want to chat about something specific.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
Because like, once we get to 3, I'm done.
I'm gonna start over here.
Are you guys scheduled to do SNA03 as the double voices again, or is
That's not even out yet, so.
So-
when it does come out?
Actually, I saw a post, and they don't tell voice actors anything, by the way, because we talk for a living and we'll probably say the wrong thing.
Right.
So we get all
or we'll say the right thing at the wrong time. Like they're like, we were planning a major announcement, and then you guys just casually let it slip. We Tom Holland Infinity. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
constantly. So they haven't officially told us anything, but I have seen on Instagram announcements that it's coming like at the end of summer. So I can just hope they recast us.
Recast?
I mean, that's basically what happened. Not
Allow us to-
recast.
Oh,
Like, not like.
I
not
hope they recast us for season 3.
Well, I hope they pick somebody else.
No, meaning like bring us back, like cast us again in the show.
I just want somebody to take that clip and send it to Hannah. Like out of context, and then she texts us. She's like, "Why? Is something going on? Are you mad?"
But I think you can use that word both ways, right? Or am I using it
My
wrong?
mind was like,
No, I think you're right.
Bryce, why?
Like, yeah,
You're so good at it.
keep us in our roles.
I get
Recast.
what you mean now.
I think
My
it's-
brain is reading your mind. You're like, Bryce, why would you do that?
It's still very early.
Yes.
So yeah, I hope they bring us back for next season. Most likely it's gonna happen, unless Hiroe gets that clip. And not looking good for me.
No, it would be the whole cast, and it would be all your fault.
Well, I don't have to worry about anything. So.
Well, I don't know, because you were in the movie.
Yep.
We don't know where this timeline is fitting. I haven't seen anything.
I know.
You know, okay, no,
Just
no.
making bad jokes. Terrible jokes.
I love bad jokes.
I make a lot.
room.
Well, you're a dad now. It's okay.
That's true.
Well, what's my excuse for making dad jokes? I'm not a dad, nor will I ever be a dad.
You have a pet?
Yes,
You
I
can-
guess.
But I guess you still wouldn't be a dad.
I still wouldn't be a dad. Unless I would be that person like, wears the dad hat, with dad on it.
Yeah. Just tell
And people are
John
like,
the
you're a mom.
dad
I'm
now.
like, no, I'm not. I want to be the dad.
I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
We'll have matching ones. This is the weirdest fail of my life. Yes.
Okay, so in SEO there have been a lot of great soundtracks. So I've always wondered, what was all 3 of your favorites?
I actually loved the movie soundtrack. I thought the music in the movie was really solid. Maybe that's because we saw it in a huge theater with the Japanese team in front of us the first time, and so it was like very, very surreal to get that like movie experience, and everything is mixed and sounds really awesome. And then, you know, when I'm usually watching stuff on my laptop or something else, you don't get that full immersive experience. But I really liked it. I thought it was really well scored. Do you guys?
When I'm cast in a show, I'll celebrate by playing the opening theme song on repeat like 2,000 times.
Awesome.
Oh, that's a fun tradition.
Yeah, like I'll play it at my house and then I'll play it all the way to the studio, and then I get there and I'm just pumped to start the show. So I think that very first opening song is my favorite.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Actually, I do the same thing with a lot of shows that I'm in. So, Courage, I think the opening from Mother's Rosario meant like a lot to me during that time. So it's also just like a really powerful song too. So it's really cool.
Your turn.
My turn. It's like it is.
Do you want me to try to turn it up?
I just need to talk louder because I'm quiet.
Wait, there is another microphone.
Oh,
I'm gonna mess you.
Our beat off.
Okay, wait. Talk.
Hello. Oh, it's me.
Is that better?
I don't know.
I can't tell. I'll push this one.
Better?
I'm just gonna hit all the buttons.
Oh my god.
What a prank.
I'm so anxious right now. My stomach is fluttering. I'm afraid something is going to explode.
Bryce is gonna have way too much fun with this.
I was going to say, walk away slowly and don't dare blame that on me.
Bryce, this is why we can't have nice things.
It's true. This is why they don't let us touch the microphone in the studio.
Yesterday, I walked in. If you guys were at my Love and Light panel, I went to pull the mic from the stand, but when I went to pull it, this little metal part at the top wasn't screwed on, and it came off, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna sit here. I was gonna walk around, but I'm not going to now, because, and I was like trying to screw it back on, I was like, I didn't know this came off.
I didn't know that came out.
Yeah, exactly.
She tries to do it.
I don't think it was like this microphone. It was different.
I can feel it moving. All right.
Can you really?
No, maybe it's the placebo at this point. I think it's moving because I want it to. Blue lipstick. Or green. Is it green or blue? Okay, I was right. Not colorblind.
See, that's cool blue lipstick. Mine was the color gray ice.
Yes. Oh man, do you guys get this question a lot?
All the time.
Yeah, so I feel like my characters are kind of like children that live inside my mind. And my children are insane and screaming. So I don't want to make them angry by picking the wrong one. In all honesty, it's very difficult to book work as a voice actor. There's a ton of competition, a lot of really talented actors out there that we're constantly competing against. And the auditioning process is pretty grueling. I tell people if they book 1 out of 100 auditions, they're doing extremely well in the industry. So I'm just I'm a big fan of paying my rent. So I love all of my characters. I always answer this question with, just check out Wikipedia. Those are my favorite. What about you guys?
So I have a weird experience that my favorite is the last one that I recorded. So the most recent one. So when I finish recording for the day, I'm like, man, that is my favorite character to record. And then I go to another studio, I'm like, man, I love playing that character.
Yeah.
And so I'll call, like, if I call my mom in between, I'm like, that was such a great session. I love playing this character. This is my favorite project to work on. And I go to another session, talking to her later, I'm like, that one's the best. She's like, you don't make sense. But I think it's just like when you're in it, you're living in the moment,
Yeah.
and you like love that session, you love getting to work, and then you move on and you repeat the whole process again. And the people that we get to work with, I think is a majority. It's way more the rule than the exception that our engineers and directors are lovely, talented people. I think there's been, on one hand, at the last 20-something years that I've been working, that I can say, like, this director made me cry. So they're all lovely, and you all have inside jokes, and it's just fun. It's fun. So I love all of them.
I feel like sometimes the experience makes a character better than like maybe the character actually is sometimes.
Yeah.
Working with a specific director and engineer and stuff like that. So it's very hard to choose with like all the factors that are available. But I usually, like, whenever I get asked that question, I change my answer every time. But since I haven't talked about Agresco too much this con, Repsco is probably one of my favorites right now. So.
Awesome. My turn. Let's go over here.
Me?
Yeah.
Ah, okay, cool. You voiced Red in Pokemon Origins or Generations, right?
Origins, yeah.
I'd have to say that was probably one of the best roles because of the fact that you're more well known just to scream your frickin' lungs out, but
True.
Red's more like
I agree.
I think that's pretty cool to see because Red is just such an iconic character. I think he just did him justice.
Thank you.
Anyway, who do you think would win a fight? Kirito or Red?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you for bringing up Red in Pokemon Origins. It was sort of a dream role for me because I grew up playing Pokemon Red for Game Boy. Beat that game multiple times. I picked Charmander first. So it's incredible to be the OG Pokemon master. I'd love for them to make another 3 billion episodes of that show because it went way too fast. He catches all the Pokemon in 4 episodes. Spoiler.
I didn't know that was possible.
You picked correctly.
Yes, picked correctly. So Kirito versus anyone, I always have to ask this question. Is it inside a game or outside a game?
Great question.
Because outside a game, Kirito loses almost every time. Because he is a skinny gamer that can barely hit 90 on a scale with quarters in his pocket.
That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I did not want to do that because I felt so bad. Like the translation was brutal when he was running, and Asuna, like I think the translation initially was like, "You should probably lose some weight," and I was like, "I will not say that. I will not say that to him. That's mean."
So I came in after you recorded that, and I heard your version. I'm like, ouch! I feel like that was directed at me.
That was nicer than what the translation was. Usually I'm like, just shut your mouth and say what they're telling you to say. But I was like, I will not say that to someone. That's so mean. My soul broke a little bit reading that.
So Kirito outside the game, Red wins. Inside the game, Kirito's cheating. So anyone versus Kirito inside the game, Kirito wins. In my opinion.
Well, I mean, I have an objection to that.
Oh wow! Let's hear this.
Yuuki beats him.
That's true.
Cheating or not.
He's not cheating in that game.
Well, whatever. Either way.
As much.
He knew that
Just gotta say he flipped.
in the game permanently, pretty much.
Yeah, that's why I said not as much.
Probably almost got him.
Why are you making my children fight each other?
You're never gonna sleep. You're never gonna sleep, Bryce.
Your turn.
Oh, it's my turn. Red sleeve right here. Yes. Sorry, this sleeve is really hard to help direct.
What do you think about the new rewrite for Sword Art Online?
Oh, the spin-off, the Gun Gale spin-off? Have you guys, is that what you're talking about?
No, the rewrite for original SAO.
Progressive?
Oh, Progressive.
Yeah.
Oh, so, and I haven't read it, so correct me if I'm wrong. SAO Progressive is the telling of the Aincrad arc, but like very detailed.
Yeah.
It's like you get, like they're still on floor 1 for like how many books? Like forever.
I think I have the
For
first,
2 books.
I think I have one of the books. I've not read it yet because I know once I start reading it, I'm gonna want the other one. So I have to figure out which one I have so that I can have the other one.
My hope for Progressive is that they relaunch the series sometime in the future.
Yeah, like a Brotherhood
Brotherhood.
situation.
Exactly.
That would be really cool.
Because, you know, in season 1 it does these time jumps, which I thought were really interesting and a good way to kind of push the story forward. But a ton happens in that time period, so it would be really interesting to see what happens and to see it animated.
And to see it from the perspectives of different characters, I think would be cool. Like
Totally.
how they interpret those moments that we've already seen.
Hi. Let's go right here in the reddish-orange jacket, yeah.
I know you mentioned the translation was hard. How many times did they have to change the wording based off what was actually translated in the original English scripts?
Well, for that line in particular, Alex gave me like a couple options that we just changed. I think one was like, maybe we'll just work out a little bit and get in shape, which is a little bit nicer than being like, hey, you need to drop some lbs. And then, so we just saw what fit the flaps, and since he wrote the rest of the show, he's really quick at rewrites, so I think it's maybe 1 or 2 options, and he wrote them really quick. Sometimes, when I've had to adapt scripts, and you could probably answer this as well, because I know you do a lot of adaptation. it'll take hours. Because you don't want, sometimes they'll repeat in the translation, like when I was writing for Fairy Tale, there was a lot of the moon, and then we cut to like another group of people, oh my gosh, the moon, and then it's like, oh my, 50 people are going to be saying the moon for the next 6 minutes. It's gonna stop. So you've got to figure out other ways to be like, what's going on in the sky, or like, what is that light, or find all these ways, and then make it fit the flaps, and that can be exhausting for something that should just be 2 flaps, because you don't want things to repeat over and over again, or have a line start with so, or hey.
They do that a lot in Japanese.
They do, and so that can be kind of tricky, but usually by the time it gets to us in the booth, the writer has already slaved over the script for hours and hours and hours, and we can move pretty quick. And if there are rewrites, it's usually manageable. Maybe we rewrite it. I would say I've had to do like rewrites. At the max take like 10, 20 minutes, and then we'll do a couple alts just to be safe.
Sometimes a calculate, like not written ahead of time, but just change for a moment.
Yeah, there's been a couple. I know in Sailor Moon, because we've been so comfortable with those characters for a while, that the director will say, I don't think this is funny enough. Or we'll be watching and we'll just come up with a little joke that we know would never end up in the show, and we're just doing like a little commentary. And then the director's like, let's just record it anyway, and we'll put it as a blooper track. Alex is very famous for doing that. Let's just save it as a blooper. And then sometimes it makes it end, which is terrible. Yeah.
I think the goal with rewrites is not to say exactly what the Japanese translation is, but to have it fit the flaps and communicate sort of the same message.
Yeah.
And then have the delivery give you the same feeling. And you might accomplish it in a different way than the Japanese. So maybe for my characters, maybe you don't scream quite as loud. And it still communicates the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.